Let's start today's story at the end of Revenge of the Sith, when Obi-Wan and Yoda are on their way to Naboo. Kenobi announces that he will take Anakin's son Luke to Tatooine, where he will watch over him. In the original timeline, Bail interjects and offers he and his wife to be the guardians for Leia. But what if Yoda actually believes he can raise Leia the best, instilling in her the knowledge of the Jedi? What if Leia was trained as a Jedi? Kenobi and Organa would agree, and Yoda takes baby Leia to Dagobah. They are living in seclusion, away from Kenobi and the rest of the Jedi, with minimal ways of contacting each other. But this is how it had to be to ensure the protection of the galaxy. Yoda would immediately begin Leia's training. Under the tutelage of Yoda on the isolated planet of Dagobah, Leia's training began with the basics and gradually advanced to the most complex aspects of the Force. Starting with rigorous physical conditioning and the fundamentals of lightsaber combat, she quickly became proficient with her blue lightsaber, learning various forms including Shiko and Sorsu. But she preferred Form 5, Dim So. Leia's training was not confined to physical skills. She spent countless hours in meditation, developing a deep connection with the Force, which allowed her to sense any disturbances and hone her Chosen One genes. Yoda guided her through the practice of telekinesis, enabling her to lift and manipulate objects of great size and weight, including trees and swamp creatures of Dagobah. She mastered the Jedi mind trick, enhancing her ability to influence the thoughts of others, and developed a sense for the future, similar to that of her father, Anakin Skywalker, which allowed her to foresee and avoid danger. Her Force abilities expanded to include advanced techniques, such as Force Lightning Absorption, a skill that Yoda pioneered himself and believed that it would be a useful asset against the Emperor in the future. Yoda also took Leia on several missions off-world to enhance her skills in the Force. Remaining on Dagobah her entire childhood would turn anyone mad. Together, they traveled to ancient Jedi temples scattered across the galaxy, each journey offering profound lessons and trials. Their first stop was the Temple of Edid on Derevon, where Leia was amazed by the towering statues and intricate walls depicting Jedi history. Coming from Dagobah, she had never seen anything like this before. Here, Yoda shared the tales of his own training, recounting his early years under the tutelage of Master Incada del Gormo. This is his master in Legends, but for now, that's all we have. He expressed the profound teachings that he received about the Force. Continuing onward to Jeddah, they visited the Temple of the Kyber, where Leia spent over a day searching for her own Kyber crystal. Back on Dagobah, she had been using one of Yoda's spare sabers that he took from the temple. But now, she would grow a connection with her own blade, something that would only increase her skills in the Force. Yoda taught her to listen to the Kyber's whispers, enhancing her understanding of the Force and how to use it to aid your journey. Their journey continued to Ossus, where the great Jedi library lay in ruins. Amidst the ancient texts and holocrons, Leia learned about the Jedi Code and the values that the Jedi of old had to live under. Yoda shared stories of the Jedi Council's deliberations, even mentioning the tale of the Chosen One, who came into the Order at 9 years old to be trained. He didn't reveal what would become of that child over a decade later, but perhaps in the future he would. Leia would use her Kyber crystal to construct her lightsaber. Each temple they visited had its own challenges, but gave her a different reward. Throughout these travels, Yoda's wisdom and experiences were extremely helpful. By the time she turned 19, she had become an extraordinarily powerful and skilled Jedi. She was the bloodline of the Chosen One, and the Force came easily to her. Yoda was amazed about how strong she had become by her young age. One night, as Leia slept on Dagobah, she was thrusted into a nightmare. She found herself in a dark, metallic corridor, where a man in a terrifying black suit emerged from the shadows, his crimson lightsaber humming and glowing. Before him stood an old man. She had never seen him before, but he held a blue lightsaber. The vision became painfully clear as the dark figure raised his weapon and sliced through the old man. The vision's intensity surged, and she felt as though the dark figure was getting closer, breathing down upon her neck. The overwhelming terror jolted Leia awake, her scream echoing through the winds of Dagobah. She sat up, drenched in sweat as Yoda came running inside her room. Leia told her master what had happened, who slowly understood everything as she explained it. Leia was known to sense the future during her training, much like her father had done once before his fall to the dark side. After listening, Yoda knew that this vision included Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the dark figure had to have been Anakin. The link between Leia is what would have caused the vision. He decides to reach out to Obi-Wan for the first time in 19 years. Yoda understood that he could no longer shield Leia from the full truth of her heritage and the darkness that lurked in her family's past. He needed to prepare her for the revelation and the role that she would be destined to play in the coming wars. Yoda, stoic as ever, finished the story of the Chosen One that he had told her about on their travels. How the Chosen One fell to the dark side, purged the Jedi Temple, but his wife had given birth to twins, one of which was named Leia. Obi-Wan responds that he is safe and inside his hut on Tatooine. Yoda doesn't mention the vision to Kenobi, but he knows that it's time to come back and Obi-Wan must reveal everything to Luke. Kenobi would do just that against Owen and Brew, who disagree with the Jedi's decision, but ultimately they couldn't stop him. Leia wrestled with the knowledge that she had just learned. She asked Yoda a million questions, desiring to understand everything. She was the daughter of the Chosen One of the Force, but also the most terrifying and evil man in the galaxy. It was a lot to come to terms with, and she knew that she would have to gain complete control over her emotions before she eventually faced him. Yoda believed that he instructed Leia the best that he could, and there is little to nothing more that he could teach her. She was arguably the most powerful student in over 500 years of Jedi tutelage. A few days would pass after Leia learned everything when they both received an urgent message from Obi-Wan, explaining that they had been caught in a tractor beam and are being pulled towards a planet-sized battle station. Kenobi conveys that they need assistance immediately. Yoda and Obi-Wan both knew that this time was slowly approaching. The children of Skywalker would be released to the galaxy for everyone to see. Although Luke was starting fresh, he hadn't been trained on Tatooine, unlike Leia, who possessed the strength of a fully formed Jedi Knight on their way to become a Jedi Master. Yoda and Leia immediately leave Dagobah and set course for their position, which they would reach very quickly. Luke and Obi-Wan, alongside smugglers Han Solo and Chewbacca and two protocol droids, R2-D2 and C-3PO, had already been pulled inside the space station. As they arrive, they fail to make contact with Kenobi, who wasn't responding. Yoda sensed the dark side, and they knew they must tread with caution, allowing themselves to be pulled in via a tractor beam and subsequently evading Imperial capture. They begin their searches. Locating Luke and their new friends, Leia and Luke finally meet each other, twins separated at birth. Yoda asks where Obi-Wan is, but he didn't know. Continuing their searches, Leia and Yoda sense a large surge of Force energy coming from the hangar bay. As they arrive, they see Kenobi fighting a tall dark figure. Yoda immediately recognizes him as Anakin. No one else would be adorned such as this. Kenobi looks over towards them. In the original timeline, Kenobi allowed himself to be struck down by Vader in order to give Luke and his friends enough time to escape. But in today's story, with Leia and Yoda present, he would not give up. Instead, Yoda and Leia leap into action and engage with the Dark Lord. Vader immediately assumes the defenses. He didn't recognize the young girl with them, but he knew Yoda, the old Jedi Grand Master whom he thought perished decades ago. Fear rushed over him, and the Jedi could sense it. Their combined strength pushed Anakin back to the ground, giving them enough time to escape the Death Star while stormtroopers fired at them. They all survive and are aboard the Millennium Falcon, with Yoda's ship attached to it. Proper introductions were made, and the two Jedi Masters caught up for the first time in 2 decades. It was officially time to join the rebellion and help them in their fight against the Empire. Vader now knew that Obi-Wan and Yoda were alive, but more than that, he knew they had trained apprentices. Luke and Leia immediately became close, bonding and learning everything there is about each other. They had missed the opportunity to be siblings for the first 20 years of their lives, something they didn't blame the Jedi for as they knew their healthy intentions, but now they would ensure they grow a lifelong bond. Luke's training would begin, and he knew he wouldn't have much time to catch up to speed before he met action. Obi-Wan contacts Bail Organa, explaining the situation and how they are joining the rebellion. The old senator sends through the coordinates of the rebellion's position, and they hit hyperspace. Across the galaxy, Vader would contact his master, Emperor Palpatine, and inform him of his encounter with Obi-Wan, Yoda, and the mysterious Jedi apprentices. Palpatine was angered beyond belief. He couldn't believe that this was happening. How was the Green Devil alive this entire time? And he knew that Vader's 2 failures in killing Kenobi would eventually incur repercussions for the Empire. Vader was punished for this inconvenience by lightning from his master, plunging the Dark Lord into pain that he had become so accustomed to. The Emperor knew the action had to be taken. The Jedi had to be killed before the rebellion's strength reached a formidable height. He believed that only he and Vader had the capacity to duel Yoda and Kenobi. No one else could be trusted. By this point, the Inquisitor program was finished as all Inquisitors were dead. The result of this led to Palpatine and Vader personally entering missions together across the Empire. Every time there was a mention of rebels, they traveled there and slaughtered everyone in sight. Innocents, children, and some rebels, it didn't matter. Vader hadn't seen his master this upset and ferocious since the fall of the Jedi, where there were thousands of them. Now only a couple remained and his hatred had taken over. Finding and killing the Jedi became the largest priority for the Sith. The Jedi officially arrived at the rebellion's headquarters, where they were welcomed with open arms. In this story, Bail is still alive as Tarkin had no reason to use Alderaan as his demonstration for the Death Star. Because of this, Bail and Mon Mothma personally greet the Jedi. They were stoked to have them, and it completely changed the course of the organization. Not only were Yoda and Kenobi incredible fighters, they knew how to command morale and immediately raise the respect given to the rebellion. When news reached the HoloNet of Kenobi and Yoda's return, thousands of people signed up for the rebellion. Their numbers reached a new height, and things were going according to plan. Luke was being trained in the ways of the Force, and he became proficient very quickly. Every day, he, Leia, Obi-Wan, and Yoda would train for hours on end, preparing for the upcoming conflicts. They focused on lightsaber techniques for dueling and blaster deflection, how to use the Force to its greatest abilities, not only for practical use, but also to hone their mind and senses, and they controlled their emotions. Luke ascended through the ranks. The Jedi would go on missions throughout the galaxy for the rebellion, slowly hurting the Empire and enhancing the view towards the rebellion. After months of successful missions and the rebellion's consistent growth of members, Palpatine had enough. Things had to change. The Emperor went on a tear. He went from world to world and pillaged everything. He had to make a statement to the galaxy that to defy the Emperor would result in deaths on a scale never seen before. There was no Senate anymore. Palpatine had no one to answer to, and none could defeat him, not even Vader. As more rebels were defeated by the Sith Lord personally, word of the Emperor's involvement in the battles began spreading throughout the rebellion. People were terrified, and some stopped going into the field. It was beginning to disrupt many things. Now it was too dangerous for a small team of rebels to go and reclaim a small village or town from the Empire on a random desolate planet. Everyone feared that they would run into Vader or Palpatine. The Jedi knew that they had to face them. It was the only way to put an end to the constant slaughter, but also fear and trepidation that filled the minds of rebels, citizens, and anyone tired of the Empire's oppression. Although Obi-Wan and Yoda desired for Luke to be better prepared to face them, they knew there wasn't much time. The rebellion prepared for a large assault onto the planet Kashyyyk to forcefully take it from the Empire and as a result, receive strong Wookiee fighters. Kenobi and Yoda spoke to the entire rebellion prior to the invasion to raise morale. Everyone knew that people's motivation to continue fighting was dwindling, and fear was increasing. But Yoda and Obi-Wan reinvigorated them, reminded them of the evil they were fighting against and the importance of destroying the Empire and ensuring that their children and grandchildren grew up in a safe and free galaxy. The rebellion prepared their fleet, the largest army they had ever amassed in their ranks. They were ready. Entering the system, they organized their ships as they descended upon the planet. Kashyyyk wasn't heavily guarded. There were certainly many Imperials on the ground that would need to be met, but they weren't any real fight. The real fight came when Vader and Palpatine learned of this invasion, and within the space of an hour, gathered an enormous Imperial fleet to recapture the planet. Bail Organa and the Jedi knew that the Emperor would immediately retaliate. This was their best chance against the rebels in years. But the same could be said for the rebellion, who had the opportunity to eliminate both Vader and Palpatine. As their ships enter the planet, a large assault in the atmosphere takes place. Dozens of destroyers, each commanded by high-ranking Imperials, led the battle. As the starfight in the skies was set ablaze, Imperial ships slipped past the fighting and made their way to the forest planet below. Imperial forces, equipped with AT-AT walkers and TIE fighters, relentlessly bombarded Wookiee villages high in the towering Wookiee trees. The rebels, alongside the Wookiee warriors, used their strong knowledge of the terrain to set ambushes, utilizing hidden traps and tactics to counter the superior firepower of the Emperor. The skies above were a flurry of laser fire and dogfights as X-Wings clashed with TIE fighters, while on the ground, the forest was met with sounds of blaster fire and explosions. Rebel artillery units targeted the advancing Imperial armor. Both sides suffered heavy casualties as the battle raged on, neither able to gain a decisive advantage amidst the treacherous and difficult terrain. However, the Jedi soon located the Sith Lords in the distance as crimson swords were flung into the bodies of rebels. Approaching, the Sith Lords can see and sense four powerful users: Yoda, Obi-Wan, Luke, and Leia, each extremely powerful in their own right. The duel began as a clash of lightsabers created sparks as they all moved with incredible speed and precision. Yoda leaped and twirled, his green blade a blur as he engaged Palpatine. Meanwhile, Kenobi, Luke, and Leia focused on Vader, their coordinated attacks forcing the Sith Lord to constantly adjust his defenses. The battle was intense and difficult to predict, with Vader's powerful strikes countered by Kenobi's mastery of Form 3. Leia's agility and intuition kept her one step ahead, but it was obvious that Luke was the weak link. Palpatine unleashed a torrent of Force lightning against Kenobi. He was momentarily staggered, allowing him to turn all of his attention to Yoda, who was leaping above both Sith Lords, trying to defend both himself and Luke. With a sinister grin, Palpatine engaged Yoda whilst he was focused on Vader and Luke, and in a swift strike, he killed Yoda. Fueled by their loss, Luke and Leia redoubled their efforts, driving Vader back. In a moment of anger and sadness at the loss of Yoda, Leia uses her immense force powers that she learned from her master over the last 20 years and slices through Vader's arm, severing it and forcing him to the ground. With a powerful force push, Luke and Leia sent Vader crashing into the trees, leaving him incapacitated and out of the duel. Turning their combined fury towards Palpatine, Luke, Leia, and Kenobi pressed their attacks, overwhelming him with a barrage of lightsaber strikes and force powers. Their sabers clashed with the Sith Lord's dark power in a duel filled with intensity and high stakes. Despite Palpatine's desperate attempts to defend himself, the trio's relentless onslaught proved too much, and with a final, decisive strike, they ended the Emperor's reign of terror against the galaxy. With the defeat of Palpatine and Vader, the tide of the Battle of Kashyyyk shifted decisively in favor of the rebels. News of the Sith Lord's demise spread rapidly, demoralizing the Imperial forces and disrupting their chain of command. Seizing the opportunity, the rebels and Wookiee warriors launched a coordinated counter-offensive, targeting key positions. Rebel starships rained fire from the skies, decimating the Imperial ground forces, while Wookiees led fierce ground assaults, overpowering the remaining stormtroopers. Within hours, the Imperial forces were either captured or killed, leading to a decisive rebel victory on Kashyyyk. This triumph resonated throughout the galaxy, igniting uprisings on numerous worlds. The fall of the Emperor's leadership and the loss at Kashyyyk marked the beginning of the end for the Galactic Empire. United and emboldened, the rebellion launched a series of offenses that significantly dismantled the remaining Imperial strongholds. The death of the Emperor completely ruined the Empire, and with no suitable replacement, the Empire completely crumbled. Within the space of weeks, the rebels took control of Coruscant and restored peace and justice in the galaxy. Bail Organa becomes Chancellor, and the process of restoring the galaxy to what it once was before Palpatine's rise had begun. Imprisoned for his heinous crimes, Vader became lost in his hatred, but eventually, after the destruction of the Empire and restoration of the Republic, he learned the truth of his children. Luke and Leia, the two he fought on Kashyyyk, were his children. The twins visited him persistently. Initially, Vader's heart was hardened against them, and the sight of Obi-Wan Kenobi, his old mentor whom he felt resentment towards. Yet, as the weeks turned into months, their presence began to chip away at his defenses. Obi-Wan spoke often of their shared past, evoking memories of Anakin Skywalker's former self, a heroic Jedi who fought for justice. Through these conversations and the unconditional love shown by Luke and Leia, Vader's cold exterior gradually decreased. He started to see that they genuinely wanted to see what was best for him, offering a path to redemption that he never thought possible. Slowly, Vader shed his Sith persona and turned back to the light, becoming Anakin Skywalker again. Anakin found a sense of peace and purpose, surrounded by the love of his children and the companionship of his old friend. Everything had worked out in the end. Leia mourned the death of her master, but she knew he was looking down on them with happiness. The Jedi would make it their life mission to ensure that the Sith never return again. If you enjoyed today's video, you must watch What If Ahsoka Raised Luke and Leia, and What If Vader sensed that Leia was his daughter in A New Hope. Please check out our membership page if you would like to support the channel, it really helps us out. Thank you all for watching, and may the Force be with you.